This 12-inch hand screw clamp was made in China. This 12-inch hand screw clamp was made in the USA. I paid about $12 for this clamp, and I paid about $28 for this clamp. Did I waste my money? Okay, I hit you with somewhat of a trick question. I asked in relation to these two clamps, did I waste my money? I could have meant, did I waste my money buying hand screw clamps? There are some YouTube woodworkers who are recommending against buying these clamps. No, that's not what I meant. I'm actually quite glad to have these clamps in my shop now. I suppose the other thing I could have meant is, did I waste my money by buying tools made in China? No, that's not what I meant either. The question is, did I waste the money by spending 2 1/3 times more on a US made tool versus a cheaper overseas tool? That's a question I really struggle with in my woodworking, which is when to make the extra investment in USA made tools. Obviously, to advance my woodworking projects and skills, I need to spend money on supplies, tools, and materials. But the reality is, I couldn't afford to buy everything made in the USA. It's just too expensive. So I have to make some tough decisions. Let's dig into some of the details of these clamps and try to dissect whether or not that additional expense was worth it. There's actually 5 brands of clamps here. There's the Dubuque brand, which is the only brand made in the United States. Some of you may be familiar with the Jorgensen brand, but these clamps are no longer made in the United States. And then we have the Tool Shop brand, which is sold by Menards. We have the Pittsburgh brand, which is sold by Harbor Freight. And then we have the Rockler brand, which obviously is sold by Rockler. The Jorgensen and the Dubuque clamps are the only ones made of maple. The Rockler, Harbor Freight, and Menards brands are all made of what is described as quote-unquote hardwood. To truly understand the price versus value proposition that each one of these clamps offer, we have to take a closer look at the quality of construction and materials. In my opinion, the best build quality is here on the Micro Moose brand from Dubuque Company. It's really nice maple and it's really well machined. The threading on the screws here is extremely nice. The handles are very well done. They're very solid. There's no wiggle room in these at all, and they seem to be fixed with a really nice pen. Also, the handles are in nice shape and they have a larger circumference than most of the other handles. The smaller Dubuque clamp is the same story. Extremely nice build quality and materials, very smooth operation, and really nothing to complain about on either of these clamps. I would say in second place is the Jorgensen. Again, very nice build quality. Perhaps not as nice as the Micro Moose brand, but pretty good. Very nice maple. The handles are a little smaller but comfortable. They seem very solid, and the operation is very, very smooth. Next, let's look at the Harbor Freight clamp. This clamp is perfectly functional, and I've been using it for a while, and it works just fine. It doesn't feel as solid as the Dubuque and the Jorgensen. The machining on the metal parts seems a lot more rough. The machining on the wood is also more rough. There seems to be a little bit of wiggle in some of the handles, and this generic hardwood is just not as nice, although it seems perfectly durable. The Tool Shop clamp is pretty much the same story. They seem to be very similar in build quality and construction, and even the wood seems to be roughly the same species as far as I can tell. The Rockler clamp is kind of the same story. Rough machining, sort of a mystery hardwood here that seems to be the same species as these other two. The only difference here is there's a unique shape to the handle. And things seem to be pretty solid, but just not as smooth as the last batch of clamps we looked at. Let's take a look at some of the details. The bottom handle and screw are from the Dubuque clamp, and the top handle and screw are from the Harbor Freight clamp. If we look at the machining on the Dubuque screw, you can see it's that sort of flat top grind to the screw. We've got a very nice roll pin here in the handle, and this is very thick metal for the furling. On the Harbor Freight handle, the pin isn't as nicely fitted, the handle isn't as nicely fitted, and this metal seems to be a little thinner. We can also see that the Dubuque clamps have a much higher quality machining, at least on the exposed parts, of these threaded inserts as compared to the Harbor Freight clamps, which are much more rough. I can only assume that the internal components of this threaded insert are rough as well. And here's another illustration of the quality difference in the milling of the wood cauls themselves. You can see that the pieces here on the Dubuque clamp are nicely machined, very thin point compared to the Harbor Freight clamp, which is very roughly machined and even shows visible saw markings. I did my best to give you a visual of the quality difference between the Dubuque clamps and the Harbor Freight clamps, but let's do a sound test. I'll be quiet here and close these up and see if I can't give you an accurate representation of what this sounds like. And here's the sound of the Harbor Freight clamp. To my ear, I hear a lot more rattling and grinding on this clamp. So let me take a checkpoint and see where I'm at on this. The truth is, these two clamps aren't in the same category. It's not really fair to compare the prices. So in broad strokes, the Rockler, Harbor Freight, and Tool Shop clamps are all about the same, and the Dubuque and Jorgensen clamps are all about the same as well. So let me show you a chart comparing the costs of these different brands. I did some searching and I tried to find the cheapest price for each one of these clamps online. And to keep everything equal, I only chose prices which did not include shipping. So do I feel I wasted my money on the more expensive made in the USA Dubuque Micro Moose clamps? No, I don't. These clamps are excellent quality, and compared to the Jorgensen, they're even a little bit cheaper in some cases. So I'm glad I have these good quality clamps here. The Jorgensen clamp is a high quality clamp, but for this price point, I'd rather spend the few extra dollars and support US manufacturing. That being said, I also don't regret buying the Harbor Freight Pittsburgh brand or the Menards Tool Shop brand. Those clamps are a very good value, and in some cases I might want to modify those clamps for a special purpose. I'd much rather make those modifications to the less expensive clamps. Well, that's it for this Woodshop Nerdery video. I hope to see you next time. Bye!